Should I go no-code or hire a full-stack engineer? For context, I was a realtor for 5 years. I won Rookie of the Year at Berkshire Hathaway. I realized, however, that my kids, homeowners of the future, are not going to make a phone call to a realtor to come to their house, sit down, and flip through a listing presentation before sliding over a stack of paperwork. Paying 42 grand to sell a home is just not something I see Gen Z agreeing to, if there is a comprehensive and mobile-first alternative to it. Realtors get a signature and back to their computer and do MLS data entry, price, address, housing details, drag and drop photos, etc. They click publish, and in 24 hours, the home is listed on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com. I had a very good UI UX designer create a Figma prototype for a consumer-facing, mobile-friendly MLS that would enable homeowners to seamlessly and frictionlessly publish their listing for free. Zero commissions, baby. A Robinhood for real estate. My brokerage is on the back end, ensuring compliance and handling paperwork. Where I am struggling is in whether or not to use Bubble or Adalo as no-code alternatives to outsourcing the dev. As with all bootstrap projects, the more trust and availability, the more cost. I'm building half a product, MVP, not a half-assed product. Plugging into the market of freelancers is awful. They are so cynical, knowing full well most of these projects get nowhere and fail. I need morally serious guidance. Is there a market for that, TopTal? Or should I retain some control over the quality by just using a no-code solution? Thanks kindly. Get a CTO. You want to build a tech-based business, you need someone technical to build, maintain, and scale it. Also, side note, in the UK I see adverts all the time for purple bricks, which is basically what you're describing. Check them out, they're quite successful. You can probably copy it in your home country, but nice to have a foundation to copy. Good luck. Appreciate you comment. Purple Bricks seems to be doing things offline and want an expert to get in touch with you after filling out forms. I am attempting to give consumers full autonomy. Do not go to a developer agency. Worst idea ever. It's expensive, especially with each maintenance charge, and you don't have much control over IP. I've done that, and I'd suggest you this. Hire people from Southeast Asia, Indonesia in particular, on full part-time basis. Talent there is super cheap and super cool. You will have them at your disposal, and it will be your own team. Would you be able to DM me any leads for these Indonesia-based devs? Thanks. The problem is, how do you get photos done? Airbnb model. Send out professional photographers. Hire a professional photographer for the day would be a ton cheaper than the fees being discussed and would result in a way better product, I'm guessing. Easy upsell on the platform. Homes with professional photography sell for $50K more. Book yours for $500. Or, a smartphone. The take pics with your smartphone route just doesn't work. Pretty much can't give users that option. That's why these platforms insert a person at that point. They were actually totally aware. There's a pretty famous story about the founders showing up to initial customers' houses to take the pictures themselves because people sucked at it so much. This comment is kind of helpful. Wow. True, if the poster has no technical background, this totally makes sense. I say this all the time, but I've never seen a no-code app become successful, and I always ask for examples of successful no-code apps that I may not know of. No one is able to provide one. Maybe you'll be the first one? I personally think no-code platforms are false hope for non-tech people, but that's just my opinion. Agreed. They are a great tool for certain use cases such as simple SaaS platforms, MVPs, simple marketplaces, etc. I love no-low code, but fully recognize they aren't a one-size-fits-all solution. Yeah, OP can start with no code, but then what happens if it gains traction or there are issues with the platform and you need to create an actual stack with code base? Some platforms allow you to export, but the reality is low-no code gets you locked into it to some degree. I've seen successful quick fixes, dashboards, and generally corporate apps that serves a single purpose with no code. Never seen successful public-facing stuff. These are all made by experienced full-stack devs that just slam something together with a working infrastructure. A non-technical person could never make that, even in no code. I would much rather use ChatGPT methodically and get a simple prototype going. Learn Git from the beginning unless you want to break your code early on without any way of reverting back to a working version. Yeah, I've always thought no code was kind of funny, because a novice using a no-code app will immediately run into system design questions, database relationship questions, etc. Then 3 months later, they're hiring experts off Upwork. I think it's a good thing for the world, but yeah, the hard part of coding isn't syntax, lol. No code will let you get to a point where customers want the product, give you money, and it starts to fail at scale. It's not a bad place to be. It can give you some revenue and leverage to hire more people at that point, or get investments. I worked many years ago as a FileMaker Pro developer. We had tons of clients, creating systems for smaller firms but also universities, basically a faster way to create a GUI for a DB than the web. I really enjoyed it, because damn was it fast. I love FileMaker Pro. Haven't heard FileMaker Pro in decades. Yeah, I was surprised it still exists and is sold when I looked. Had V1 in my hands, never used it. Hell yeah, I wish there was a local CloudKit version of FMP. Remember Fourth Dimension? The only place I've seen them succeed is in enterprise settings, as they need to quickly prototype apps for small volumes of users. Even there, they'll inevitably be replaced by an app built in a more traditional way. I agree to a certain degree. I'm a marketer by trade and use no code extensively to test ideas. If they work, I go out and get a developer to build a full tool. If they flop, I close it. If they do okay but need further validation, I typically grow marketing and see if we have any adoption with this new approach. I've sold a few no-code bubble apps for interesting projects, which have a few users, but which don't develop quite as I see. As others have mentioned, I view them as tools, but I could also say the same of full code. Startup I used to work at made almost everyone redundant, struggled for a few years and built something in no code, sold for $10,000 in the summer. It can be done, but I'm not sure what the acquirer was really getting. Not trying to be a D-bag, but have you Googled successful no-code app? There are a few examples to include one company that got acquired. I think no-code apps are pretty useful to build MVPs and prove product market fit quickly before sinking too much into devs. I just did, and the top result does have some impressive apps that have raised lots of capital. It was telling that one of the examples was the Princeton concession app for ordering food at Princeton Stadium. Scaling is hard enough. Having to rebuild your entire stack as soon as you get traction is something I wouldn't recommend. Wildy high percentage of failures. Maybe the Princeton concession app will be appreciated more after its time, like Dvorak. I have, and the vast majority have been rewritten into 100% custom apps or simply don't exist anymore. Bro, what do you think an MVP is? Of course it's getting rewritten. Rewriting is a recipe for failure. Skill issue. No, complexity and continuity issue. There's a way, but rewriting. If replacing 6 weeks of slapped-together functionality with a well-architected codebase creates a disaster, then you need new devs. Big shrug. You might be able to refactor your MVP into your V1, but that means you built your MVP to be able to do that. Wasted effort if you wind up not going ahead or pivoting. Refactoring is an underappreciated approach, has always been. Went to a small meeting chaired by Kent Beck years ago, and he said as much. I also have plenty of experience in this. Of course, some choices early on can ease future changes. Yay, refactoring is part of startup life for sure. Which ones? Absolutely. Good for simple MVP maybe. Custom apps require custom coding. I could a no-code app being tweaked by a coder, 1 to 3 years away though. What is a no-code platform for? Not technical enough for developers, and useless enough for non-technical folks. I've been hired to revamp some of them, so there's that. No-code platforms are a tool, just like code is a tool. If the business doesn't become successful, it's unlikely to be down to what it's been built with. Having said that, from experience, a high-traffic B2C app isn't a great use case for no-code. B2B, high-ticket price is what you want. Do you know one successful continues to use no-code, or no one successful has ever used no-code? I could see it being useful to build a sleek-looking MVP. If then your product is wanted by users, then go the engineer real code route. As someone with technical and troubleshooting experience but no true coding experience, no code is super useful. But that's because I essentially know how to write code, what systems to connect it to, what data structures need to exist and be further processed, etc. I just don't know any of the syntax. For anyone else, I'd imagine it's a nightmare. The main problem isn't the actual coder, it's the lack of the competency that you would have if you got yourself a CTO familiar with early startups. You cannot replace that by simply telling a coder to code something. It's the same as how you can't replace architects and general contractors, etc., with only a guy great with a hammer. Edit, I haven't listened to this one myself, but have to heap a score. podcast.apple.com/podcast/ycombinator/ID 13690742121. How to build a tech startup with no technical skills. 100 cent. An inexperienced product owner leading a probably low-cost, low-skilled developer is a recipe for disaster and an expensive lesson. I agree 100%. We are primarily a technical team in the finance space, helping other companies get funding. We hired people with the right financial licenses. I've easily seen 4,000 business pitches at this point. We've done about $50 million in funding to date. A huge mistake I see all the damn time. People paying an offshore dev team $5,000, $10,000 per month to just fuck around building a very simple website. Because there is no competent technical leadership, the offshore dev team just builds whatever the business owner wants that month. And they easily spend $500,000 on an MVP that should have been $60,000 max. Then 2 years later, they run out of capital and try to sell their janky site like it somehow counts as a tech company with revenue. Because the founding team paid so much, they think it is worth a lot. But it's junk. It is guaranteed to be riddled with gapping software security flaws, a bunch of broken, overly complex code copied from somewhere else, but stupidly doesn't even do its one job correctly. I'm low-key at the point where I'm legit angry at the number of people who assume they should run a tech company when they have such little insight they can't even tell they are bad at it. Like if you are a doctor, you would not assume you could architect a hospital just because you know a guy that does cement. But people do this exact thing in tech all the time. I literally know hundreds of business owners with a Main Street business background that want to run a tech company, despite never working in a tech company or business unit. OP should go work at a prop tech company for a year and see what the actual work of producing a technical product is like. The management of a tech project can't just be wished away, it's a proper skill set. I feel this pain as an experienced UX designer. The amount of companies I've seen do this, even after me constantly telling them the actual pride of what things should cost, and way more advice. A lot of stakeholders think they know it all. Insightful comment. Where would you begin? Would you start with a strong CTO, full-stack developer, and someone that does sales plus marketing? I feel the startup I'm at, we are in a similar position where we need someone to come in who knows the ins and outs of building a functional piece of software. There are a lot of moving pieces. Actually, talk to and hire someone who has managed the full life cycle of a software project. You can hire them as a consultant. Do not just hire a random person with CTO in their job history. And for the love of all that's holy, don't find some coder and give them 50% of the company on a handshake. Structuring the shares of a company is its own whole thing. In a large enterprise company, the CTO primarily are managers of budgets and people, and have not been hands-on technical staff in the last 10 to 20 years. So essentially, they are used to budgets of $5 to $20 million or more, and they have zero familiarity with newer software and zero experience with newer best practices. If the CTO is from a startup background, the odds are very high that they have never managed other people or projects or budgets. They were just the one software developer on the team and were given a vanity title of CTO without any actual leadership responsibilities. I would literally find someone on LinkedIn who has either worked in a tech company doing management of a software team, or someone who has been a product owner in a startup with at least 50 to 100 people. Then engage them for a limited amount of consulting that includes things like software development lifecycle, business analyst, technical requirements, project management, agile, lean startup, building an MVP, development milestones, user stories, etc. That will give you the planning. Then you can hire a software architect out of a dev shop or a friend who will do side work for things like buy vs build decisions, servers, development testing, production environments, code repository, access controls, change controls, QA, UAT, UX, UI, software security, software architecture, software coding, code maintenance, code warranty, etc. The main pitfall that people get wrong is failing to realize software coders can only build what you tell them to build. They lack the skill set to know what the business actually needs built. In a large corporation, company leadership decides they have enough money and political will to create a solution. Then they assign budget and assign a manager. The manager will work with a business analyst to bridge the gap between what the marketing department thinks they can sell and what the technical team can build. Then the business analyst will create a list of requirements. This software needs XYZ to do the thing leadership wants. Then that list of business requirements tells the manager what type of technical lead, UX, UI, developers, QA, and technical delivery manager they need. At this point, the software manager has a business analyst, project manager, technical lead, UX, UI designer, some number of coders, access to some QA resources, and they should spin up the actually development environment, servers, code repository, database access, software security like firewalls, project management tools, and have all the budget admins settled. Then they set monthly agile sprints, aiming for specific dates where they will promote the development code into the testing environment. Then they build the code in order of the requirements. This is where you have estimates of how much time each chunk will take. Then perform software security testing, like testing the static code for vulnerabilities and inspecting web interactions and possibly penetration testing. Then quality assurance testing and user acceptance testing. At that point, the project manager will ensure they have obtained all the change control permissions, and they will set a deployment date where the software will be promoted to production and tested to make sure it didn't break anything else while it was being plugged in. Then, the deployment team promises to fix any bugs for 30 days, while they transition ownership of the code to the maintenance team, who will be responsible for regular code. Accurate common sense here, coming from this solopreneur, nerd and sometimes manager of nerds. You're still primarily talking about a coder. A full-stack dev isn't a competent CTO just because they get the title. You're better off with a fractional CTO that's competent than trying to make it a single role. Yes, good point. And to that I have seen many fraction CTOs on LinkedIn. I would need to find the right fit, but I do feel this is definitely a starting point. Someone that knows what to do and then can tell us what specific skills are needed to hire for. Thanks. The issue with those owners is that they're too convinced by their own ideas and refuse any feedback. I run a web agency and seen this before, both as owner and previously as an employee. We get a project started by another team, and I have no idea what the code I'm looking at is doing. We sometimes just rewrite everything to add a simple feature or fix a bug because of how junky the code is. And when you raise concern to the client, You get met with gems like "that's the nature of startups" or "that's not a priority." At one project, I found out by chance that the login check if the email and passwords exist independently. It means using any existing email with any user password, and you are logged in with that email. When I informed the client, I was told, since no one knows, it's not a problem yet. I gave up after a while, and I just started doing what they wanted and stopped trying to advise on things. I just report a bug if I find one and let them have that decision. The business failed not too long after. I would only suggest no code to build an interactive concept yourself, with little buttons you can click to take you to different pages, to show investors to raise some funding. Would I suggest building a legit product without code? Never. I totally agree with this. There's a slim to zero chance you can use a no-code tool and build an MVP yourself within a year, if ever. Building an app isn't just coding, as most non-coders imagine it to be. There are hundreds of decisions that you, as someone not in the software industry, will be screwing up left and right. It's as silly as saying, instead of using Photoshop, coding, I'm going to use AI, no code, to make a movie. You're missing the 90% of all the other skills you need to make a good movie or a good app. Also, when trying to hire a dev, how the hell do you know if it's a good dev for the job? If their incentives is short-term, you will be screwed. What you need is to find a CTO partner who is in it for the long term with equity, who has demonstrable past experience of building apps that you can trust for all technical decisions. Can you not get a sense of a dev's competency through their past work and previous experience? Short answer, no. I've seen so many non-tech people screw up recruiting tech people simply because they don't know what past experiences are relevant. It doesn't matter if they're the world's greatest expert in some tech if it isn't the right tech and the right associated skills needed. Not if you're not technical. Long story short, I'm a full-stack engineer, 20 years experience, master's in AI from Georgia Tech, etc., etc. I'll give you a resume if you want it. Also successfully sold a fintech to a large US bank in 2021. Me and my friend, another coder, who is also a licensed appraiser and a realtor, believe it or not, are interested if you want to throw together a quick team and do this. DM me if interested. Was your friend a part of that exit as well? Thanks. Yes. Curious, what tech stack do you use? Last startup, Azure, C#, Angular 7, later Angular 14, SQL Server and Cosmic DB. Next few projects I'm dabbling in: AWS, Python 3.11, Postgres, Angular 16. Nice. Is that Python on the back end? I'm debating Django or FastAPI for my next project. And do you plan to use a database ORM like Prisma plus GraphQL with Postgres, or just REST? Yes, Fast API. I'm using SQL Alchemy, SQL Model, Pydantic v2. Any advice other than your own tech team for building a unique tech product is tomfoolery. Get serious. Grow a team. Don't skimp out. Robinhood for real estate. This is such a smart play. And with your brokerage behind it, I suspect you have several ways to generate revenue. It's not only Gen Z. As an old millennial consumer, I also don't want to pay 42 grand to sell my home. Getting out in front of this could be a big business. You're also right from two sides about freelancers. Their skepticism can ruin your project. But I know why they are skeptical, and they are right to be. I'm a seasoned startup engineer who's been shopping for a non-tech co-founder with a viable idea. There are tons of non-tech folks with big ideas out there. They tend to think getting someone to code up their vision will print money like magic. It's like the underpants gnomes. It's like Watts, youtube.com/Watts. I have learned to vet for these folks. You're in a killer position to set yourself apart from them. I have seen lots of folks sink tens of thousands into agencies and contractors. They pay to build their thing only to have it go nowhere. Guns for hire will take your money and do what you tell them. They bill by the hour, so the more the better. Then there are enthusiastic techies who want any excuse to build something. They will buy into your dream with no skepticism and get right to work without asking questions. This was me 15 years ago. This is a cheaper way to go nowhere, but it still goes nowhere. You hit the nail on the head. Build half a product. The right tech person can help you identify the right half to build, and then they can help you cut it in half again, and then once more. You want someone who will push back because they actually care about the future of your business. Vested interest is the key. On the flip side, low no-code has a ton of lock-in and will become a dead end over time. You know you can't take a bubble app out of bubble? If you manage to produce something viable, you'll need to go back to the drawing board if it gets any traction. That approach is impossible the more people have used your product. But that's not likely anyway. You can't reach comparable quality with low no-code that you can with competent dev, and people have a strong instinct for quality when it comes time to put in their credit card. Morally serious guidance exists. I try to offer it to every non-tech founder I talk to because I take pride in my skills and believe in giving value first. The best I can suggest to you is connect with people who know their stuff. If their incentives are well aligned with yours, or at least not counter, learn all that you can from them. Thank you for your thoughts. I was born in '85, but I've always been fascinated as a marketer, so see the effect of being born into tech opposed to adopting it later has had on Gen Z consumerism. I have been involved in the prop tech space for some time, and it's interesting to see how one MVP and the exit strategy means different things for that company than other who may be less interested in involving venture capital, dreaming of an IPO, etc. It is my assessment that I could in fact whip something up and probably generate $100,000 a month in revenue before involving a dev. But I'd rather not be a blue-collar business and pursue the vision of scaling this and blowing this up as it is a timely opportunity. There are tech, cultural, and regulatory asteroids all heading toward the traditional 6% commission. I need the founding team, I need the VCs to make the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time and prefer to go that route. Finding a technical co-founder is extraordinarily difficult. It's not just about coding. In this stage, it's about communication and meticulous planning. You must plan everything correctly, which is very hard to achieve for non-tech people. It's likely that developers alone won't meet all your needs at this stage. I'm a real estate professional from India, and this is how real estate, buying and renting, has worked in India for almost a decade now. I've never really understood why people need a broker for everything in USA. Anyway, best of luck. Buying a house here is a bit complicated. There are a ton of laws and disclosures, and if you screw up, you can get sued. And every state is a bit different. Sellers and buyers have a ton of disclosures and other forms when submitting an offer, like a 22 AD appraisal addendum and inspection clauses, etc. There's a system of earnest money and loan qualifications that all go into a successful offer. It could probably all be automated, but buyers would need the software to explain to them the legal issues with the offer they're submitting, and sellers would need to understand their end too. For example, my house has 4 bedrooms, but I'm not legally allowed to advertise it as such because the septic system is only certified for 3. You see, it happens still, but it's a legal risk. It's no different here. We have different layers of authority, and it's as complicated as you'd like it. Being in India, I have a broader view of the US market as my cousins who live there bought homes due to them being cheaper than in India. We also sell a lot of apartments to the Indian American diaspora, and it doesn't seem more complicated than India. If anything, we are messier, with each city having its own laws, followed by state and central laws. However, surprisingly, around 70 to 80% of primary real estate sales in India are processed without any middleman involved. Well, maybe it's the Realtor Association's lobbying keeping tech at bay. I'm sure not looking forward to losing 6% to commission when I sell my house. This seems to be the only logical reason. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. I guess that works in India because the property portals permit owners to list their properties on the websites directly. For e.g., here in Dubai, you have to have a RERA registered brokerage along with a Dubai Economic Department trade license to put a property on the popular websites. So only if you are a registered brokerage, you can put your clients' properties on the popular portals. I guess the same works in the US also. Yeah, property owners can list their properties, and they don't need any middleman to process the transaction, as most properties are bought using bank mortgages. If any diligence is needed, banks do that anyway. But the majority of Indian real estate in metros is still young and driven by developers. They have their own teams and prefer doing things by themselves instead of involving brokers. As a software company owner who have built MVPs for some early-stage startups, I have a few questions. Who is the target audience for the MVP? How is this MVP being shared? What are the no-code solutions that you have tried? What worked and what didn't? Most importantly, what should your MVP be able to do, and what are your constraints? The target audience are younger homeowners who are selling their home in Florida. Texas is next. The first point of contact is Instagram. To see the ad, double-click, app installed. I haven't tried any no-code solutions. We are just now ready to start the development. The MVP is supposed to give homeowners the option to list their home for sale on Zillow, Trulia, and Realtor.com without a realtor. It's not for sale by owner because a brokerage is involved. My brokerage. I'm not aware of any constraints. It's a fairly basic tool at the moment.